Hearing of the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board number 48. Today's date is May 22. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to start with a roll call from my far right.
Zach Lindsay.
Patty Beckman. Libby Hart-Wells.
Julie Sanowski. Board Member Greenberg, you're in the cloud,
And
correct?
yeah, that's correct.
We have a quorum. All board members are present. Right, at this time, we will hear about the approval of revision number 3 to the 2021-2022 expenditure budget. Shannon Crozier.
Good evening. We'll let IT get that set up. Okay. Good evening, Board President Sanowski, Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells, members of the board, Dr. Menzel, and guests. Tonight we are looking at the third and final revision for the expenditure budget for 21-22 this current school year. The reason we're bringing this back is that by state statute, prior to May 15th of a budget year, the district must take any and all budget revisions to the governing board for approval. And so that is what we're doing tonight. So this first slide just looks at where we are with our ADM, how we started out, what we thought with the adopted revision 1, revision 2 was done in December, and then where we've landed for revision 3. All in all, between revision 2 and revision 3, we're down ADM about 67 ADM across the board. And those adjustments will happen from December on. When we look at the significant changes, so we had a budget increase from revision 2 to revision 3 of a little over $1.2 million. Interestingly, the average daily membership decreased. But as you recall, we've talked about in the past, we get weights for students depending on what grade levels they're in. There's also additional Group B weights that have to do with K-3, with special needs students, and then there's a new one in there for this year that has to do with gifted. So because of those adjustments within the weights, even though our ADM is up, our student weighted count, or ADM was down, our student weighted count was up for the second and final, or third and final revision. So we increased that about 127. Most of that being within Group B weights, part of that being within the gifted. We anticipate, and there's adjustments that'll end up happening, even though we do our revision now, the state at the end of the year will go through and look at everything, and if there's any more tweaks that end up happening with enrollment or with where students land within the weight counts, they'll adjust that. So there's a chance that our Group B weight for gifted will go up a little bit more, but that's where we're estimated to be at for right now. So because that increased our revenue control limit by $582,000. DSEG and the other add-ons stayed the same, but we did have, ADM did an audit of our prior year, ADE did an audit of our prior year ADM for the last several years, and between those several years, found some adjustments that we needed to make. And so we do have a decrease of $626,000 because of those ADM adjustments from that audit. And then when we did the December revision and between now, we've been working with ADE, there were some calculations that didn't get picked up from the end of last year that had to do with closing out new school opening fund and moving it to M&O last year, which we did to put more funds in M&O. So because of those adjustments, our prior year carry forward increased as well. So between all of those ADM adjustments, losing some money for the prior year ADM, but also picking up some additional carry forward from last year, that put us at an increase of $1.2 million. Within the other funds, our federal grants increased by $3.5 million. That happened within Title I, Title III, and Title IV. Those grants don't end until later in the year, and then you have carry forward, so it's typical to see funding increases between that. The other part that happened within our federal grants is the state came out and said, we have another ESSER grant for you that has to do with school safety, and so we picked up quite a few additional social workers through that grant, and so that's also the big feeder into that 3.5 increase. Within our state grants, we increased $5.7 million. That had to do with results-based funding and receiving those funds. Really, between the last two, there haven't been that many changes. I did receive a question earlier this evening that had to do with the summary that was sent out and why there was a percent increase that was fairly substantial within special education, M&O, and a couple of functions that have to do with administration. And the dollar change is not huge. The dollar change on one of them is like $30,000 and another $2,000 on a different line. And it came down to mileage. Last year, we didn't have staff driving around. We weren't budgeting as much for mileage. As we close out this year and reconcile and say, okay, these are the expenses and where expenses are landing this year, we have more staff that are driving and receiving mileage reimbursement. So the percent looks large. The dollar amount isn't, and it really has to do with what that mileage is. Other than that, I'll open up to other questions.
Governing board members, do any of you have questions? Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, President Sinowski. Thank you, Shannon, for your presentation. I have one, let me just clarify. So is it a fair conclusion, based on your summary there, that we've received more dollars in some of these categories than we projected to receive, and then we spent those dollars accordingly?
Where you see the percentages increase it, yes. So one of the things we do is when we do this final revision, we look at exactly where was our spending for this year, and then the other part of that is we make sure there's a little bit of cushion in all of those functions and object codes, so that we have, in case an expenditure comes in, it's May, we still have 2 more months to go. Right. So we put a little cushion in there on the various function and object codes, so that if something came in unanticipated, that we would have coverage.
Okay, thank you. And then just a clarifying question for me. Do these adjustments factor in the little over $2.4 million that the district received from the governor's office as reimbursed expenses for the COVID mitigation success?
Yeah, that is not included in here. We know that we have been allocated 2.4 for expenditures for this year and next year. The grant application just actually was closed on Friday, so we have not received a single penny from that. We haven't allocated or budgeted or anything on that because it really just closed on Friday.
It's not real. Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Do any other governing board members have any questions on revision number 3 of the 2021-2022 expenditure budget? Board Member Greenberg, do you have any?
I do not, other than Shannon, on the ADE revision, is that the amount that was adjusted per the audit we recently found out about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions at this time? All right, seeing none, we will move on to 2D, public comments. Are there any public comments at this time in regards specifically to the approval of revision number 3 to the 2021-2022 expenditure budget? All right, seeing none, I ask for a motion to adjourn this public hearing.
Now we need to approve the revisions.
Oh, okay, thank you. I ask for a motion to approve the revisions to the expenditure budget.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made and a second. All in favor to approve the revision number 3 to the 2021-22 expenditure budget, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this public hearing.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning this public hearing, please say aye.
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 All right, the motion to adjourn this public hearing passes we adjourn this meeting at 6:10 p.m. on May 10th. At this time, I call to order the Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board meeting on May 10th at 6:10 p.m. At this time, I would like to ask Vice President Dr. Hartwells to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Hartwells. We'll start with a roll call vote from my far right.
Zach Lindsay.
Patty Beckman.
Libby Hartwells.
Julie Sanowski.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Thank you. We have all 5 governing board members present, and we have a quorum. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor to approve the agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thanks. We are going to start with our superintendent comments. Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells, and members of the governing board. We now have 2 weeks remaining in the 21-22 school year, and it has been quite a journey. And I'm not going to take this evening to recap that entire journey, but there are a few important things that I do want to discuss. You may recall that pre-pandemic, Scottsdale had conducted a couple of climate surveys with Hanover, one in 2018, one in 2019. The survey gathers data related to culture and climate in our schools, and responses have been solicited from staff, students, parents, and community members. And participation in the survey is voluntary. We are about to launch the Hanover survey again, so post-pandemic for the first time, to collect that same kind of information. We believe it's important to have the data to inform our continued commitment to engaging all students in world-class, future-focused learning. And so we're going to be sending information out to our middle school and high school parents probably tomorrow. With respect to the survey, as I said, participation is voluntary. The questions are essentially the same as they were for the first 2 administrations so that we can compare pre- and post-pandemic. In the prior versions of the survey, we included 4th and 5th graders. This time, we're only going to invite middle school and high school students to participate. Parents will have an opportunity, if they want, to opt their student out of participation. So that information goes out tomorrow, and before Monday, we'll need to know whether or not students are opted out. And if they are, they won't get the survey link. Those who aren't opted out still don't have to participate. They have a choice. But it is voluntary to participate. We also really do want our parents to take the time, it's generally about 10 minutes, to provide their feedback because all of this is important as we work to improve educational opportunities for our students. Survey will launch on Monday the 16th. It will close on Friday the 20th. That will allow Hanover enough time to review the data, make sure that we have the proper reporting. We've asked them for a little bit more reporting than in prior years because I'm interested in knowing building-specific information in addition to aggregate. So in the past, they've looked at grain bands. So what do we see at elementary, middle, and high school? I also want to know what we're seeing by building, and so that'll take a little bit more time. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there have been a number of things that have been circulating in our community this past week that I think require some additional explanation. So let me start by just reminding everyone about 2 of our core values organizationally. The first is empathy, which by that we mean we welcome all with kindness, love, compassion, and joy. The second is inclusion. We create an equitable environment where everyone is respected, treated with dignity, and has a sense of belonging. So this past week, we received 2 KEB complaints regarding a staff member in one of our buildings. This complaint also has been out in social media. There have been a lot of public comments about it, and there was even a press release related to it. In addition to those KEB complaints, I also received a concern from an organization called Freedom from Religion, with allegations that a high school teacher has been proselytizing students in one of our schools. While not submitted as a KEB complaint, the process used to review and respond is similar. So I think it's important for people to understand what the process is when someone files a KEB complaint and how that gets treated. First, I just want to read the policy to be very clear. KEB states, trust in staff members and support for their actions should be such that employees are freed from unnecessary, spiteful, or negative criticisms and complaints. In spite of this, criticisms and complaints may be forthcoming. These complaints are best handled starting at the school level and when necessary should proceed through the various administrative levels. All complaints shall be referred to the superintendent or designee for investigation. The employee involved shall be given an opportunity at each administrative level at which the matter is reviewed for explanation, comment, and presentation of facts, either formally or informally. The employee will be afforded elements of due process as provided by Arizona law. Once a complaint has been filed, it is routed to the appropriate staff member. Sometimes this is in Human Resources or General Counsel, but it could also be a building principal or someone who supervises a department. We take each concern seriously, but just like in our court of law, a staff member is presumed innocent as we begin the investigation into the concerns. Our goal is to ascertain facts and understand the issue from both the perspective of the individual or individuals who submitted the complaint, as well as the staff member and anyone who may have relevant information related to the material under review. Typically, a KEB review takes a week to 10 days to complete before a report is finalized and a response is given to the individual who filed the concern. And the timeline can vary depending on availability of people for interviews and what other information is necessary. We always encourage people to directly address their concerns with the individual in question. So if a parent has a concern with the teacher, we encourage them to have the conversation first with the teacher before going to the principal. That is respectful and is the best way to hopefully get to quick resolution to the concern. If the concern isn't addressed satisfactorily, then there is a process for it to move to the various administrative levels. There are several levels before it gets to me and to the governing board, although we've noticed that many times people simply want to go to the governing board without following the proper chain of command. So on May 2nd, in the afternoon, I received a KEB complaint regarding a Kids Club employee. This information was sent to the governing board as well as our general counsel. I was out of the office on Monday and Tuesday attending an educational symposium, but I did reply on Wednesday indicating that we had received the complaint and that it had been forwarded for appropriate review of the concern. On May 5th, without any additional conversation, a press release was issued on campaign letterhead with 4 signatories, all candidates for public office, titled "Concerned Parents and Community Leaders Pen Open Letter to Scottsdale Unified School District." This was an overtly political act placed prior to finalizing any investigation of the KEB complaint that was given to us, and it was shared widely on social media. To target an individual publicly for their personal identity, in this case the individual against whom the complaint was filed does not identify as either male or female, is overt discrimination and inconsistent with state and federal law as well as school district policy. More specifically, Board Policy AC states the following: the district and governing board are committed to a policy of non-discrimination that does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation and transgender identity, disability, age, height, weight, marital or family status, religion, military status, ancestry, genetic information, or any other legally protected category, collectively protected classes, in its programs and activities, including employment opportunities. You may also recall the City of Scottsdale adopted a non-discrimination, anti-harassment policy in April of 2021. It states in relevant part, it is the policy of the city not to discriminate and provide equal opportunity to all persons, regardless of actual or perceived race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability in the access, provision, and treatment of city services, programs, and activities. It is the policy of the city that all persons be treated with respect and dignity as specified in sections 15-4 through 15-7. Each person has the right to receive services from the city in a manner that promotes equality under the law and prohibits unlawful discrimination, including harassment and retaliation. The City of Scottsdale and the Scottsdale Unified School District are committed to creating environments where each individual is respected, treated with dignity, and has a sense of belonging. Additionally, we are obligated by state and federal law to be non-discriminatory in our employment practices. The KEB complaint related to the employee has not gone through all of the steps, and therefore I will not address details here, other than to emphasize the seriousness with which we take the concerns and our commitment to non-discrimination. Our parents need to know and understand that we prioritize the safety and well-being of our students. In the past, including this current school year, employees who have engaged in unacceptable and inappropriate behavior have been disciplined and/or terminated from employment. Such a decision is made after a careful review of the facts, not simply based on allegations. The decision to circumvent the investigation and not wait for findings before issuing the open letter reflects an agenda that is political in nature and not one that was committed to ensuring that there wasn't a violation of board policy or state or federal law. I need to say something to our Scottsdale Unified School District employees. This district will not take adverse employment action against any individual as a result of their identity, no matter how offensive that may be to some. I want to say that again. Scottsdale Unified School District will not take adverse employment action against an individual employee as a result of their identity. Inappropriate action and conduct will be addressed consistent with board policy and state and federal law, but an individual's identity will never be the basis for termination, dismissal, unlawful harassment, etc. This brings me to the second complaint, submitted by the organization called Freedom from Religion. This group also issued a press release, it was either last night or this morning, outlining their concerns. In the complaint, it alleged that a high school teacher is proselytizing students. Specific examples were given along with pertinent legal citations regarding how the actions violated law. Much like the other KEB complaints, after we received it, the concern was referred for appropriate investigation. We did not place the teacher on leave. We did not assume a violation of state or federal law prior to completing the investigation. We will not discriminate against an employee solely based on their religious faith, whether it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, or no faith at all. But we will address concerns about specific actions if the investigation reveals that something took place that was in violation of board policy or state or federal statute. The level of vitriol and targeted attacks toward an employee whose gender identity doesn't conform to the traditional male-female classification is disconcerting to me. Our SUSD values of excellence, integrity, empathy, inclusion, trust, and unity exist to ensure an environment where all are welcome, regardless of their individual identity, religious beliefs, or political affiliations. Hate and targeted attacks toward individuals on our staff are inconsistent and incompatible with these core values. It is my hope that our Scottsdale community will respond with kindness, love, and compassion towards all as we work to finish this school year on a positive note. Speaking of a positive note, I would like to point out that tomorrow is National Nurses Day, and we are truly grateful for the work of our Scottsdale Unified School District nurses. Throughout the pandemic, they've been on the front lines addressing both the health challenges in our buildings as well as responding to concerns of students and parents and dealing with their day-to-day responsibilities in addition to COVID. And finally, I would like to ask you to join me in congratulating our Communications Department. May 13th has been identified as National School Communicators Day. And so I'd like to acknowledge Christine Harrington, Nancy Norman, Victor, and Laney for the work they do to tell the SUSD story.
Dr. Menzel, thank you for your comments, and thank you for leading our district. Appreciate it. At this time, we will move on to agenda item 7, information discussion items, starting off with our SAA, SEA, and SSPA updates. I believe Presidents Becky Williams, Carrie Blaker, Veronica Leeper are here to share their reports at this time.
I guess we're going to finish the year like this. Good evening, Governing Board President Sinowski, Vice President Dr. Hartwells, board members, Superintendent, and Dr. Menzel, and guests. I would like to take this moment to recognize some key players this year for me. There have been times, I'm going to try to do this unemotionally. There have been times when someone from the district needed to call the SSPA for input or approval. I would be the one to get that call. Some of you here already know the answer I give, so let the record show that my response is and always will be that I am not the association, I am only the president. It is our executive board, our meet and confer team, and the members that make up the SSPA. We are an organization that chooses to work together. When one has an issue or suggestion, we look to find others with the same interest to support, and that is where all of our work began back in 2020. I would like to thank Krista Dimitroulias. I said that a million times on my way out here, so I change your last name. I would like to thank Krista for sticking with me as the VP through this amazing adventure. As you all know, our day jobs alone keep us busy beyond anything we can even describe because there are so many vacancies throughout the district that a lot of us are covering for 1 or 2 staff members that have left, and those positions being hard to fill. After we clock out is when our job begins, which leads me to the classified meet and confer team. We all volunteer our time to meet one night every 2 weeks from 4 to 8 p.m. to get the job done. I would like to thank ESP's Brenda Spicek, Julie Gildersleeve, Susan Wall, and Ed Milford for their valuable time and participation inside interest-based negotiations. It is amazing that we show up drained from our day jobs and leave almost every time inspired to do more and to help more. Additionally, I do not want to leave out the admin team that sit and meet and confer with us. Thank you, Dr. Guerin, Amy Goff, and Dennis Rayler. Together, they are rebuilding trust with us as they actively listen to the classified stories that we bring forward. We have valued their participation. They step back to hear our suggestions then they engage by providing positive feedback, especially when it has come to the additions and subtractions to the handbook revisions. Together, we have been collaborating solutions, some immediate, some with goals in mind, all to better policies and procedures, salaries, benefits, and working conditions. Together, our work has only begun, and I'm so excited to see what the future unfolds. We are narrowing down the voices that say, we didn't know SSPA existed. We have had over 250 one-on-one conversations with fellow classified brothers and sisters. Our membership has almost tripled what it was when Krista and I came on board. We are continually identifying emerging activists through close to 50 job family meetings held in the last 2 years. We have represented our fellow ESPs when called upon, and we have reached out and welcomed over 285 newly hired education support professionals during our reign. Last Friday, the SEA President, Becky Williams, and I had the honor and the opportunity to develop a welcome address to the Arizona Education Association Delegate Assembly, and we nailed it. SUSD was represented superbly through this year's combined motto, Better Together. We told the story of what we all have overcome since 2017, and the crowd was so excited for us all, and they are all waiting to hear the outcome from the Better Together with our classification agreements. To end our report for the 21-22 school year, we still have great things planned ahead. Beyond salary, the ongoing battle with minimum wage, we are working on professional development, a mentorship program, and getting something together with the Charles Foundation. Thank you, Dr. Menzel, for listening to our emails. And to this governing board, President Sinowski, Vice President Hartwells, governing board members Greenberg, Beckman, and Lindsay for steering this ship in the right direction. Encouraging collaboration and teamwork is what we have needed for the past 5 years. Please don't stop.
Carrie always jokes that we make her go first, and I wish I didn't have to follow that now because she said everything that I would like to express, but much more eloquently. So Good evening, Dr. Menzel, President Sinowski, members of the governing board, Ms. Wagner, and guests. As we come to the final weeks of the school year, we are also wrapping up our first interest-based negotiation cycle. Certified staff will be returning in July to the first negotiated employment agreement in 6 years. Going through IBN training as an entire district team was an extremely positive experience and set the tone for the work to come. As teams turn over and members are added next year, I'm hopeful that we will have the benefit of this training again. The commitment to the collaborative process on the part of all team members is critical to positive outcomes. When we all have a seat at the table, we ensure that staff have the necessary supports in place to do their jobs, and in turn, we are able to provide the optimal learning environments that our students deserve. This process has not been without its challenges, and as we grow in this process and look ahead to next year, I feel that we have some good input for thinking on some refinements to areas that were challenging. All of this is understandable considering that as a district we have not had meet and confer for 6 years, and that IBN is a new process for all of us. It has been more of a time commitment than many team members anticipated, and we are all ready for a break and looking ahead to next year. At this time, I would like to thank our certified bargaining team for their hard work so far. We aren't done yet. They are the ones truly enduring the hot seat in this process and deserve some recognition. Not here, I think, is Anna Patterson and Jennifer Liebhaber, Beth Hindenburg, and Mark Feifberg. Thank you. We would also like to thank our certified administration team, Dr. Bowman, Dr. Hagegat, Veronica Lieber, and Kane Jagodinsky. I did it. Is that right? Did I say it right? Okay, yay. I would also like to take the opportunity to recognize the members of our executive board. Board members are elected from among their peers to serve the terms prescribed by our bylaws. Service on the board is voluntary and takes place outside of contracted time. Elected members serve because they are rooted in the values of a quality public education for all of our students. We know that when education professionals have supportive working conditions, they in turn can provide the supportive learning environments that our students deserve. Please join me in recognition and gratitude of our board members. Vice President Whitney Keeler, Treasurer Anna Patterson, Secretary Carrie Kurland, and members at large Beth Hindenburg, Dave Hanlon, Pat Vasso, Charity Rekla, Karen Batson, and Jenna Emick. I truly could not be up here as the SEA president without all of you. Bert, I did not forget you. I'm saving the best for last. Bert Tavell gets an extra special shout out tonight, not because he's a more valued member of our board or deserves more recognition, but because this is our last opportunity to thank him publicly. Not only is Bert leaving the SEA board and our district, he's leaving Arizona to move to the Netherlands. But don't worry, he's not leaving the classroom. He's accepted a position as a biology teacher, and our loss is their gain. Bert is the kind of person who, as soon as you meet him, you understand about him that he is a relentless advocate for what is right. The end game for Bert is always excellent opportunities for all students in Arizona. His absence will truly be felt, and I am grateful for the time that I was able to lead this association with his support and encouragement. And with that, I would like to thank Dr. Menzel and the members of the governing board for the bringing the meet and confer process through HA policy to our district and allowing us to participate in this process. Thank you.
And it's always good for me to follow them because I can keep it short. First off, I'm going to speak for SAA, but I didn't even serve on our team. As co-presidents, Grace Stombrace served, but I had the pleasure, Dr. Menzel asked that I serve on the SEA or CEA, Certified Education Association, on their meet and confer team, their interest-based negotiations team. So that was my pleasure. It's been a really great experience for me. And I can't tell you how important it has been that the three associations have worked together on this. This is the first time, this is almost my 30th year in this district in many different roles, and we have never worked together like this. And so working together has been so important to us because we as principals and administrators, we know that we can't do this job without our other associations, without our certified and our classified, how important they are to every one of our campuses. So that has been so wonderful for us to be working together, and we've really enjoyed that. So as I said, I sat on SEA, so I reached out to my SAA members, the Administrative Association members, And they really, truly wanted to thank the district members. They wanted to thank Dr. Melissa Sakos, Shannon Crozier, and Alexis Wilson. And they said that they were so supportive and so understanding throughout the process. I wanted to jump in because as an executive board for SAA, we met regularly, so I did know what was going on in there. Grace and I speak daily almost. So I want to thank my whole team, and but especially Grace Stombrace and Nan Wilkinson. Grace, my co-president, and Nan, who is my assistant principal, has served as the assistant principal. They went the extensive amount of hours doing research, looking at principal salaries, and these went way back. Just seeing the inequities that have gone on for many years. So they were able to do all the research and bring that in. And with the help of Dr. Menzel, we were able to equalize those. They were able to make the corrections and begin the process to create a standard for principal and assistant principal salaries. They reported in the last, they were more than halfway through on the new agreement, and they are pretty sure that they're going to be able to finalize the administrative agreement by the end of the school year, by the last board meeting, so that they can bring it in. And they are very optimistic that they will finish in the next 2 meetings, and they will be ready to present, and are excited about that. So that's about it, and thank you again.
Governing board members. Okay. Do any of you have questions or comments you'd like to add at this time? Board Member Greenberg, do you have any?
Well, no, I would just like to thank all of our association heads for doing all the work they do each and every year, because it's not an easy job. We know that the work you do requires compromise, working on difficult and complex situations to reach, really meaningful solutions. So I appreciate that, and I would just like to say, if I may, Superintendent Menzel, I do very much appreciate your comments, but I did not want to unmute and clap into the microphone, so thank you.
And I would just like to note that it's evident that behind every great learning experience that our students are afforded in our school district are caring and highly qualified employees and staff members. So thank you for all of what you guys have all done, those of you in the audience that have been part of this process as well over the years and hanging in there and returning unified to our Scottsdale Unified School District. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And with
My
that,
students right now, I left this at the last strategic meeting. I'm like, my pens.
glad you got that. With that, we will move on to information discussion item 7B, proposals for consideration to the 2023 Arizona School Board Association agenda. And that conversation will be led by Vice President Dr. Hart Wells.
Thank you, President Stanowski. So just to set the stage here, you have and have had for a few days now a copy of the communications that are received so that you could take a look at it. But like we did last year, we have an opportunity to weigh in on the priorities that ASBA, as a private, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization who supports local control of school districts and excellence for all students across the state. And here's our opportunity to do that. We have until, I believe the date is May 23rd, that we have to submit the proposal. So I just want to give a little bit of background. I took from the bylaws of ASBA so we could all understand what this association really is and perhaps is not. So as I mentioned, it is a private, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. It is an advocacy organization. And the purpose of the association, according to their bylaws, is to promote the general advancement of public education in the state of Arizona, the United States of America, and its territories. That's number one. Number two, to promote lay control of public education, meaning local control. And then number three, to coordinate educational policies and procedures and promote uniform application of school laws in the state. And there are a few other more ministerial duties that are listed in their bylaws, but those are the three I think that hit home for us, and a nice segue that what we have before us is the educational policies that they have on their current agenda for consideration and advocacy at the state legislature. And I'll just read off, in case those of you at home don't have this, the 2022 priority issues. There are 4, and then there are several that drill down into these 4 different areas. And the 4 areas are the following: adequately and equitably fund district schools to at least the national median per pupil funding, to improve outcomes for all students, to preserve and strengthen local control, and then finally, require public accountability for taxpayer dollars spent on education. And when we say public education, ASBA does represent all public education organizations in the state of Arizona, not just district schools. So with that, I will leave it open to my colleagues to provide any comments for or against what's already here or requests for additions. I have a few, but I'm going to go last. I will let all of you comment if you'd like.
I would just like to add at this point that the priority issues align with what I feel is best for our students in our public schools and to attract and retain our staff members. So, and there are a lot, as you look through some of these objectives, underneath each of these priority issues, there are a lot of objectives here. So I think it's a very robust and very focused, future-focused agenda here. I can't imagine what else to add, so I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Yeah. Okay. Board Member Becky?
No, I would agree. There's still a lot of work to do in all of those areas, so, anything additional, I think, might dilute the focus of where we need to be regarding the 4 priorities that are already laid out.
Board Member Greenberg, do you have anything to add to the agenda?
President Snowski, I do not have anything to add. I think it's a pretty robust agenda, and given that, some of these items, well, the most of these items have been on the agenda for several years now, and we continue to struggle to make headway there. I think we need to just continue to focus and hopefully get some wins.
Thank you.
All right, I will put on the table the 3, and they are not that, there may be more refinements of what's already in the policy agenda. One is to index the DA for inflation, where it is currently only applied to the M&O budget and not the district additional assistance budget. I'll just read the 3 and then can comment if you'd like, please. The second, and this is something that I think shook out in an underscored way as a result of the pandemic, and that is currently online instructional remote students are not funded at full AEDM. And my request for addition would be online instructional models should be funded based not on offline minutes worked by the student, but rather fully funded the remote students as a full ADM count. Our remote students are just as important as every student. And then the third, and this may be a little bit more provocative, but this used to be on the books, that district schools were able to hold licenses to charter schools. And I would like to open the discussion at ASBA, and I've not spoken to anyone there, but I would appreciate my colleagues' thoughts on putting forward a discussion to rescind that prohibition.
Vice President Hartwells, can you please read number 1 and 3 again? It was a little muffled.
Oh, sure. So index the DA for inflation, where it's currently not. M&O is somewhat kind of indexed to inflation, but there are some caps that certainly do not track with where we're at today.
Right.
So there's work on both of those fronts. The M&O indexing is already in the agenda, by the way. The third was to roll back the prohibition on district schools from holding licenses to charter schools.
I remember when that was added.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I appreciate those. Would you mind putting those in writing and sending them out to us since we have, Dr. Menzel, would you like to add?
Oh, I just wanted to add that in the bullets under adequately and equitably fund district schools, they do include indexing DA funding for inflation, so it is,
so it's already
is
in.
part of that there, but I think it's a really important point because as we know, the inflationary pressures have been really significant. We were fortunate that they finally restored DA this past year after having cut it.
Right.
So this is the next logical step. The other part, with respect to the ability to authorize charters, I don't think the school districts were the ones who wanted to remove that. I believe that when you think about the opportunity to innovate for a district school to be able to authorize a charter to innovate without all of the same restrictions that we have as a district school, I think there's an opportunity there. And so I think there's some merit into at least re-exploring that.
Thank you. And the purpose of the inflation indexing, all of the funding, whatever you want to call it, whatever bucket it is to make sure that gets to the top of the bucket. I think we've all commented. There's a lot here. It's very, it is dense, and with a lot of good policy suggestions and reasons to advocate. But I'd like, personally, I would like to try to put some emphasis on the financial components that are in each of the 4 buckets.
So question with regard to the process. I know these priorities are due by May 23rd, I believe it is. We typically, we've handled this in different ways in the past, and I would like to get some clarity from maybe Ms. Byrd on how we are going to approve additional, since we're clearly not going to have another meeting before.
Right, I was just thinking about that. We won't have one.
We can't vote. It's a discussion item. So how do you propose we proceed should there be additions to the 4 before May 23rd?
Lori?
I'm thinking about, I will admit I need to go back and look at exactly what ASBA requires in that. You are correct, you cannot take action on anything that's going off of this agenda because we didn't notice that action was going to be taken. It may be a simple matter of, as the representative on the board, that Dr. Hartwells can consider everyone's feedback and then submit those recommendations in her capacity as a member,
Delegate.
as a delegate to the board after, in this meeting, getting the input from everyone. And so that's probably the easiest way to proceed. I need to go back, though, and look at the ASBA bylaws to look at that, and I did not do that before this meeting because I did not anticipate this question.
Okay, I appreciate that. So if Vice President Hartwells, when you send us the email with regard to your additions, your would like us to consider, maybe outline the process and how we're to proceed as well, I would appreciate it.
You bet. I did take a look at the bylaws before the meeting. So the standing committee is a legislative committee, and they will receive the request for consideration. They do not have to accept those concepts. The legislative committee will vote on a policy, a finalized political agenda, and this is stipulated in their bylaws, the whole process, certain days. They have 20 days, then they'll have to send it back out to the member boards, and you probably remember receiving this. Last year, we did take a vote on the finalized agenda, so we should have time because the vote, the 20-day window to review what the legislative committee approves as final is not until the June 20th.
Okay.
So we should have that last board meeting, should be an opportunity to have an action.
Perfect.
But if you would like to submit, I will absolutely do as you requested, Board Member Beckman, and send you all an email in writing with wording for my suggestions that I brought forward today. And then if you have anything while you think about it to add, please let me know. I'm not going to exercise any veto power. I will forward your thoughts to the Legislative Committee as you provide them.
I do appreciate your input on this. As our delegate, I have complete confidence that you will represent us very well. Thank you, Vice President Dr. Hartwells. And to be clear, DA, for those of you that are listening, refers to our district additional assistance. Board Member Greenberg, did you have anything to add?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right. Seeing none, we will move on to our action items. And action item 8A is an update on classified salary schedule. And I believe that is a Q&A, and Alexis is here to answer any questions that anyone on the governing board has. Are there any questions on this particular action item? Alexis, I would actually like to share a conversation that you and I had. Governing board members, as you can read through the summary or the background information on this particular, my concern was that the part that's bolded there, from that point down to the end, it says all classified employees received a minimum of a 3% increase, but due to the failure to increase the maximum 3%, employees at the top of the scale received the 2% increase. I was concerned with how that happened, if employees had been notified that, and I guess there are about 10 of them that fall into this category, and then how do we avoid this moving forward? Do you mind sharing what our discussion was a little bit further as far as how do we avoid this type of a situation moving forward?
Certainly. President Sanowski, members of the board, Dr. Menzel. As we discussed earlier, what happened was when we were looking to issue contracts and get salary schedules approved in early March, the timing of the process where we were with interest-based negotiations. At the time, we were very confident about the 2%, so the salary schedules were brought forward with that on the max end of the hourly wages. When we got back to the tables at interest-based negotiations, we were able to eke out another percent, and as a result, we needed to come back to have the salary schedules approved one more time to include that 1%, because there were 10 individuals who were at the top at the 2%, so in order to allow them to benefit from the 3%, we need to add that 1% back on. So, and to your question about how do you avoid something like this moving forward, as our associations mentioned earlier, interest-based negotiations is typically a much longer process than your standard meet and confer or your standard negotiation practice where you're just, here's what we have, here's what you get, and that sort of back and forth. It's a much longer process. So we would need to back our start date up for interest-based negotiations in order to try to get that landed prior to the issuance of contracts and salary schedules. So team association, we'll start as early as we can. I think the other thing we also discussed is we never know what is going to happen with the budget. That doesn't change anything whether we start in September or March for that matter. But with Ms. Crozier, usually she feels really confident about what we can do despite not necessarily knowing all the pieces of the budget.
Thank you. I really appreciate you explaining that. Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
Just in terms of process, so it sounds like the 10 employees who are adversely impacted by this kind of gap in timing, inadvertent gap in timing when the contracts are approved and your next round of interest-based negotiations, will they receive back pay? What's the implementation of how they're going to receive their
So they'll actually be reissued new notices of appointment with the higher rate.
It's for next year.
It's for effective July 1.
Okay, so it's contract correct.
Yeah.
Correct, notices.
Stays there. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from governing board members?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, at this time I ask for a motion to approve 8A updated classified salary schedule.
So moved.
Is there a second? Movement and a second. All in favor to approve the updated classified salary schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Is that an aye? Up in the cloud? Board Member Greenberg?
Yes, that was.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes 5-0. And we will move on, yes, and we will move on to action item 8B, supplemental materials. At this time, I believe Dr. Kim Dodds-Karen and company they're going to lead that discussion. Their action item, thank you.
Thank you, Magic Curtain PowerPoint.
Can you get closer to the mic? Thank you.
Okay, yes. Hello, President Sanowski, Vice President Dr. Hartwells, board members Beckman, Lindsay, and in the cloud, Board Member Greenberg. I am here tonight with two of my colleagues, Lindsay Stoller-Slover and Jonna Wallace, and we are proud to share with you the work that we have led for two particular committees, the Secondary Novels and the Supplemental Materials Committee. Our goals tonight are to review the definitions of materials, explain our processes that the committees have followed for reviewing materials, and ultimately recommend annual approval of supplemental materials and novels for 612 ELA units. The terms before you are not new to SUSD. Annually during this presentation, we provide you with this language. For our community, it is important for you to know that the curricular materials we utilize in the classroom are comprised of a wide range of resources, such as our adopted texts, supplemental books and novels, supplemental materials like a video, as well as ancillary materials that a teacher may choose to supplement a unit. Also to be noted, these definitions and our processes for curriculum recommendations presented tonight support our board policies specific to community involvement, where we include our parents, our teachers, our students, and our administrators in curricular decisions. And also, we adjust and we modify to ensure high-quality programs within our education system. Also, these types of instructional materials ensure that our curriculum is meeting the varying needs and the abilities, learning styles of the students who are in our classrooms. Tonight, we'll share with you a phased approach utilized to incorporate our new instructional materials to complement our curriculum adoptions. I'd like to also familiarize you with a process that we have to honor any SUSD request for reconsideration of an instructional material. Found on the district website for curriculum is a link to a Google form, which on this slide is highlighted as the top blue in the yellow box. This form is welcome for anybody to submit a concern that they may have related to an instructional material. The requests are received by our ELA, English Language Arts coaches, and based on the type of material that is being requested for reconsideration, it will then go to a committee appropriate, either the secondary novel review, a supplemental materials review, or if at the elementary level, it goes to an ancillary review committee. Rubrics are utilized for each of the committees, and this is obtained through, feedback is obtained through a Google form. Each of these rubrics is aligned to the skills and concepts that we are expecting the material to support. It also incorporates text complexity, and input was received from the Librarian Association, as well as previously used rubrics throughout our school district for novels, for example. This slide here illustrates for you links that are available on our curriculum websites. These are forward-facing to the public, so any material for K-5, 6, 8, or 9, 12 is visible for view by our community. With the materials that are previewed for families, we expect that our teachers will communicate any type of novel, for example, that is going to be utilized in the classroom via a curriculum night, a newsletter, their Google Classroom, any means of communication, Class Dojo, etc. We also want to make sure that our parents understand that they have the right to opt out of an instructional material, like a novel, that they might find objectionable, and that teachers therefore would then provide an alternative text for a child to read. In doing so, we want to be sure that any discussions that are taking place are available for all kids in the classroom, so the expectations for learning outcomes are consistent, regardless of the differentiated resource that might be used in the classroom. So to share a little bit about the process that we created this year and utilized, I want to introduce you to Jonna Wallace. She is our secondary English language arts coach, and she has been the champion of our secondary novel selection committee, and she'll tell you about our work this year.
When we click this, do we just press this?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Good evening. So in August of 2021, registration for participation on the Secondary Novel Review Committee was posted on the Committee Hub. Stakeholders interested in participating signed up. We had roughly 50 people apply, and of those 50, 31 were selected. The committee is comprised of parents, grandparents, guardians, teachers, site and district administrators, and members of the teaching and learning team, who also serve as the lead for their respective grade level small group. We did our best to align the group members with the grade levels they were associated with, such as a parent of a 7th grade student would be included in a middle school book club. The Secondary Novel Review Committee met throughout the school year, and the first meeting took place on October 7th, where members were placed into smaller book groups and given their first novel to read and review. Each member had a target date for reading their assigned novel and completing an evaluation rubric for that novel. Small group members would agree on a meeting date for the week following the completion of the evaluation rubric to discuss their novel and come to consensus on whether or not they would recommend that novel. The following week, all small group members would come together as a whole group to present their novels, discuss, and make recommendations. A new novel would also be assigned to each group at the whole group meetings. I know they love that part. This is an example of the information each small group would create for their novel. The summary gave the whole group an idea of what the novel is about, and it provided a premise for the positives and concerns that the small group would share out to the whole group. In the small group meeting, members would also share out any positives or concerns they had about the novel they just read, and the group would come to consensus on whether or not to recommend the novel for classroom use. This is an example of that part of the process. This would also be shared out to the whole group. When recommending a novel to the governing board for approval, several factors are considered. Is the novel aligned to the standards? Did the committee recommend the novel? If the novel was recommended, were there concerns brought forward that require additional thought and review before a recommendation is made? Based on these considerations, novels are organized into the following categories. Green, these are novels ready for recommendation. Yellow are novels that have a conditional recommendation, and red are novels that the committee did not recommend for use. Here you see a title of the 22 novels that are ready for recommendation, or as our committee refers to them, the green novels. 3 of the novels that are on this list are for the Comprehensive Gifted Program. Here you see 4 conditional recommendations, which our committee refers to as yellow novels. And as I previously mentioned, these books the committee recommends, but with caution. I will elaborate on that process for reading conditional novels on the next slide. You will also see 4 novels that the committee does not recommend for use. The committee refers to these novels as red novels. Comments as to why these novels are conditional or not recommended are included in parentheses below the titles. The process for a teacher to utilize a conditional or yellow novel emerged during our secondary novel review process. There are books that the committee believes are valuable for use in the classroom, but collaboration between the teacher, site administration, and ELA curriculum coach like myself would be important due to the complexity of some of the text. It's no surprise to any of us that as we return to school, new norms are being established, including norms for our curriculum decisions. It begins with the teacher filling out a conditional recommendation form, which is submitted to the secondary ELA curriculum coach, that's me, and their site administrator. This provides the opportunity for discussion of implementation of the novel within the classroom. Parents are also an important part of this process, and for this reason, the teacher will send a notification to their students' parents to inform them that a conditional or yellow novel will be used in the classroom and the purpose for using this novel. Parents will have the option of allowing their child to read the conditional novel or having their child read the identified alternative novel. Teachers will receive signed permission from parents prior to the start of reading the conditional novel. Now I would like to introduce Lindsay Stoller-Slover to present the supplemental materials review process.
Thank you. First, a quick thank you to our Supplemental Materials Committee members who included parents, teachers, staff, and administrators for their time and their participation. So our supplemental materials, just as a quick review, supplemental pertains to teaching and learning supported materials that are provided with district coaching and financial support and are used at multiple sites. We maintain an updated list yearly of our supplemental materials that's available on our website. So our committee process convened to consider specific supplemental materials that were submitted for review. The committee began by reaching consensus on norms, the rubric, and a system for review. The committee could recommend or not recommend materials for use. In one case, the committee recommended a resource, but with some conditions. These conditions would mean that the resource may be used only after coordination and planning with the district ELA coach, similar to novels. The committee recommended one resource for use and one resource for conditional use. The recommended resource was Letters to Juliet from ListenWise. It was a short, kind of like a podcast recording about a program where people write letters to Juliet in Verona, Italy. The one that was approved with conditions was a resource called Rap as Protest Poetry that was from StudySync. The committee did not recommend one of the resources, which was an excerpt of a podcast called How Grief Works, and that was part of the Seventh Men unit as part of SABIS. This one was not recommended because of a couple of varied reasons. One was just the use of the resource required the teacher to queue up the podcast at a specific time, which may be difficult in a classroom setting to get it right at that exact time. One of the challenges was that the podcast had some ads that may have been viewable, and also just the quality of the sound and the audio for students might not have been optimal, and so the committee chose not to recommend that particular resource. And with that, I will turn it back to Dr. Dodds for any questions.
Governing board members, do you have any questions for this team? Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
Thank you, President Sinowski. Thank you, all of you, for your presentation, and to everyone who worked on this big lift. Clearly, a lot of thoughtful consideration went into, I think, balancing a lot of weighty issues. So thank you for that. My question is on how did you, on the novel review, how did you choose these books for the reading and review for the committee? Were they teacher suggested? Were they already used in the curriculum? Were they wanted to be used in the curriculum? All of the above? What was the triage?
So the books came from our ELA adoption.
Okay.
These are novels that are recommended for use, and that was our primary focus. We also had some novels that parents, that we had received reconsideration review of reconsideration of instructional materials, and those got reviewed as well. But it was mostly SAVIS and Study Sync.
So it was, I'm sorry, just want to make sure I understand the answer then. So the answer is predominantly the novels were selected from the adopted ELA curriculum currently, and then there were a few that you added because of some communications with families.
Right.
Okay.
So to elaborate, Dr. Hartwells, when we adopted the new curriculum last year, we adopted Study Sync and we adopted My Perspectives. And along with our traditional textbook, if you will, come all of the different novels that are available to us, thousands of them that we can purchase, as well as the different supplementals like the Listen Wise, the Hook and Inspire. So as we began to add to our textbook, we reviewed the novels first. Jonna did send a survey out to the grade level teachers to say, among these books, which would you want us to prioritize, so that we could try to tap right into what our teachers were interested in considering to add to their lists. And as she had mentioned also, there was a book that we reviewed that was previously on the list but had been requested for reconsideration.
Were the books that ended up on the not recommended list the books that were, or maybe that it's too varied to say that conclusively, the books that were asked to be reconsidered?
Great question. No, the 4 books are from our new adoption, and we just felt right now they weren't appropriate.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Board Member Beckman.
Just a quick question. This August, are you opening the committee up again? What's the process for that? I want to make sure all of our parents, hear as much as we can communicate when the dates are, when it's available, what the process is, where it will be, the whole gamut.
Yep. Thank you, Board Member Beckman. We will relaunch for our committee. We do know that our current members are interested in continuing to participate as well, but we have a lot of books to read, so we will post again on Committee Hub. We found that to be very valuable. One thing that we did learn this year, as there was some transition of members of teaching and learning, we did have 2 parallel committees running. So I do want to clarify that as well. So when members were signing up for supplementals as well as novels, there was some confusion as to what a supplemental was and what a novel was. So we did make contact with folks who had initially applied for supplementals prior to me joining the team, and we did access that Google Doc, and we made personal phone calls to each of those members to ask if they wanted to join our committee. And what was great is we added a few members to our committee who had signed up for supplementals thinking that they were really signing up for novels. So we will make it very clear that this is for the novels, and supplementals is a different committee.
Okay, one more question about the committee. So is it a year-long commitment? And then if people fall off for whatever reason, say that something happens, do you go back and revisit the original applications, or do you just close that position? Say a parent gets a job and now
Yep.
they can't do it anymore.
We actually selected alternates.
Okay.
And in addition, though, our book clubs run like the book clubs many of you might belong to. So while we have our whole group meetings where we share out our books and we receive our new books, we also meet in small group. So when we meet in small group to prepare for the whole group discussion, let's say I can't attend small group. It's okay. I was able to complete my rubric. I was able to give my feedback, and a member of my small group team was able to share how our group felt about the book, which leads to a whole new whole group conversation. So we did have really good participation. People were very interested in their books. Some were interested in what other people were reading as well. So it was a very successful committee, I would say.
Okay, one last question. The list that you are prioritizing, not prioritizing, whether it be novels or supplemental, and I understood and I appreciate the question that a lot of it was SUSD related regarding the curriculum adoption. How are you going to choose going forward? I know we grandfathered in 1,000 books a long time ago in 2019 that were here previously because you couldn't read 1,000 books. And if someone wanted to challenge a particular title to have you all read it, that was the process. But for the upcoming year, how are you going to prioritize what the group actually reads? What is the process for that?
Great question. We'll continue with the books that we still have to vet.
Okay.
But we also have 2 books that have bubbled up that have raised some concern on some campuses, and one that was a request for review. So we will be adding in 2 novels for that purpose as well at the high school level.
So that's my question. You do commit to ones that are brought forward. There's never going
absolutely.
to be okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Board Member Greenberg, do you have any questions on this topic?
Yeah, I appreciate Dr. Guerin and the whole team for answering my questions. I know I had asked whether any books were being removed or placed on this new list, and whether that's happened before. I have to say, I every year we do this, and every year I always worry that we're removing books or moving them to, I guess, this kind of new conditional type list. And this year, I believe, is the first time that that's been presented to us, that we've actually removed or changed things. I'm not super sure that I'm comfortable voting in favor of this on that basis. I think, I think our students and staff need to have the freedom to teach, the books and have that academic freedom. I was looking through these lists, and I think I've noted in the past that, we have several Ayn Rand books on here. We have Unwind in the middle school list. I just find it very hard to justify allowing those books based on the comments that we received on these other books, like Ghost Boys or whatever it's called. And I believe that Dr. Guerin had mentioned in one case that there was a member of staff who was using one of the books that's now been removed for several years, and will now have to change their plan. Or had planned on using the book this year, and it's now been removed. One of the books has been removed. So I just find it, I appreciate all the work that goes into this. I appreciate, this, staff being careful and considering parent complaints, but, a number of these books appear to be books that have been complained about nationally by political organizations, which also raises my suspicions on some of this as to why those particular books were targeted, but other books were not. And I don't know, I don't mean to ramble here, but I just, this conversation makes me deeply uncomfortable.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. I have a question. How much time do you think staff time has gone into evolving this process, this year in particular? If you had to give a ballpark estimate, I'm not going to hold you to any hard number, but just a guesstimate.
2 hours for each.
Boy, it kind of depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I know, you guys are looking at each other.
Well, there's a lot of layers. For
Sure.
example, we haven't approved the novels. So
I would
that
like for
involves-
you to
yeah.
share that with the community.
Okay, so we haven't approved these novels, so they aren't something we have in our warehouse. So we work with Gidget and Tyler in the warehouse. We work with our publishers to get the materials. So some we're able to get donated as an on loan. Are you going to approve them? Others we purchase, 4 or 5 of, or we check out of our own school libraries. I read Ethan Frome, and clearly a student had read it because I found all of their Post-it notes in my book, and it was quite fascinating. And so that is one layer that I would say each time we go to do that, that's at least 2 hours for every single round that we're going through, just in terms of gathering those materials, working with our partners for gathering the materials. But then in terms of preparation for each, what Jonna didn't share is that for each of the rubrics, she actually aligns every single rubric to the essential question for the unit. So for every novel, there is a complementary unit that we're supporting. So if the theme is...
What do you learn from Love and Loss?
What do you learn from Love and Loss? That's going to go with that rubric complementing that particular book. So for the 7 books that we read 4 times throughout the year, 28 times 2 to 3 hours, hundreds of hours, I would say, has gone into preparing for and then facilitating the small groups that each of us has led, as well as Lindsay and the work that she's done with supplementals, viewing, queuing up, and preparing for so many hours, but valuable hours. I think that is something that each of us will say about our committees, is we really enjoyed, we did team builders to get to know each other because we wanted it to be a safe place, because we needed to be able to discuss and be honest about how we felt about the content we were reading. So I think that it was time very well spent.
I noticed on some of these, the conditional recommendations, they have potential other courses better suited or other grade levels. Are those books, so The Fault in Our Stars, read it, great book. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. I know some students have chosen to read that on their own, either on their devices or going to the public library and checking that book out and wanting to have conversations on that than in the classroom. And I note here that this says it may be better suited for grade 11. Is that book then shifted over to grade 11, not just recommended or maybe already ready for recommendation versus conditional recommendation?
So one of the things that we did this year because of this committee is the supplemental novel lists have been redone. There's a column for notes now, and that would be in that note column, and it would be at the site level to determine whether or not they wanted to use it for the grade level that it is actually intended for, or if they wanted to use it for a different grade level. We'll leave that at the site.
Okay, thank you. And then what about the AP Lit and IB? Because I know they have some regulating oversight that allows them and encourages them to read some more complex literature. So what is the process for those particular levels of instruction?
Yeah, thank you for that. We actually recently met with Laura Kampka to talk about that and to talk about the importance of having alternative selections available as well. And so we have confirmation from IB that they are encouraged to differentiate the text. And what historically has happened with IB, similar to what we've done for the self-contained gifted program, is run small book clubs for that particular program. So a year ago, I believe they added V for Vendetta into IB. We would do the same thing if Laura or anybody else came to us wanting to add another book.
And then what if students wanted to add a book? Because we have not included students so far in this conversation, as I've heard.
That's a really good point. And that is something we are moving toward. We have kids on our AP-IB adoption committee for Econ and Gov. And I think that is really important to honor what the kids are ready for. And that is something that really contributed to books that are on the conditional or not recommended. Based on feedback from our campus leaders and our teachers, really kind of talking about how kids are in a different place right now and what are they ready for? What are some triggers that maybe didn't exist a few years ago that today would impact really the goals of that reading assignment? So I think it would be really important, Board President Sanowski, to get feedback from our students as well.
I really appreciate that. I also really appreciate the amount of work that goes into it. If you click through this, they're color coded, so it doesn't take a lot to follow a particular path. The color coding is
Green means go.
Right? Yep, green means go, yellow means slow down, red means stop. I get it. And I think it's helpful for others that may not have the experience that our paid professionals in our English Language Arts department might have involved with literature and reviewing literature and looking at the standards set by our State Department of Education and our teachers in that extended process. So I do appreciate all that you guys have done and the number of extensions that you have for parents to have involvement, as well as respecting the professional voice. And I look forward to the inclusion of students in this process as well. And thank you for, I knew it was several hundred hours, but I think our general public needs to be aware of all that goes on behind the scenes. It's often hard to convey that in a parent-teacher conference or even a face-to-face conversation with someone. That's hard to put that forward. So I appreciate you trying to. It's probably more than hundreds. It's probably 1,000. Looking at what you guys have done this year is phenomenal. Thank you. Any other board members have questions or comments? Yes, go ahead. Board Member Greenberg?
I guess maybe that raises my question, though, because according to the information I was provided by Dr. Guerin, if I may, let's take the example of the Ghost Boys novel. So according to the information, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, I reviewed the kind of abbreviated review by the small committee, the committee of 4 or 5 individuals, who listed the positives and concerns, but ultimately their recommendation was consensus of all 4 members of the group is to recommend this book for use in 7th grade. This book requires a strong, open, robust conversation about race, since this is a complex issue, teachers are encouraged to let parents know about the book and encourage at-home discussions. And then there was a vote of the full committee that reads 13 yes, 4 no, 1 checked both options, and 1 did not select a preference. So the recommendation was made, but then all that was said was based on the conversation and comments shared in the recommendation form, the book was determined to be a conditional approval. So I'm trying to add up these numbers and understand the conditional approval. I mean, the conditional approval is that it needs to be, if it is going to be used, it needs to be used only with explicit parental consent.
So I can jump in on that one. This is Kim Guerin, Board Member Greenberg. So getting the input of the committee members was really to get a pulse check in less than a vote. So to see if we were reaching consensus and if there was concerns. So when there were concerns brought up and there was a robust discussion, what I really loved about this process is there were differing points of views where people were able to sit down and have thoughtful conversations and to come to consensus and have some agreements and disagreements in a very respectful manner and put forward recommendations. And so when they had explicit concerns, yellow is not a negative. Conditional means that there is sensitive content that we want to be very transparent about and let families know about that. And we want to provide teachers additional coaching and support to navigate that challenging curriculum or content. So I think a conditional actually is a positive because we're setting up the teacher for success, providing a high level of support from our fantastic ELA coaches and being very transparent with parents. So it's not that we're not honoring these difficult novels, we're just increasing transparency and involving more people in the process and providing more support for the teachers.
I appreciate that. I just, again, I have to say that these are all 3 novels that I was specifically told about changes were being made to, that were all novels that were specifically complained about by political organizations. And when I look at what we do have, again, I mean, I think it's hard to understate how right-wing, in my view, Ayn Rand's works are. And that is okay. I believe that students and staff should have the right to use those works and to agree with them or disagree with them. That is their choice. That is what academic freedom is. And we teach critical thinking. We do not indoctrinate students one way or the other on any matter. But I find it hard to understand why those works are not, I mean, because it is impossible for us to review all thousands of works, how can we say, where is the equity, I guess, or the fairness in assessment? Is it always going to be books that we're reviewing that happen to be the hot topic of the moment, as opposed to other works that, you know, are just lost in the shuffle of things, or what? I mean, that's what I'm just trying to, because I don't understand that aspect of the process. I mean, to me, it looks like these are mostly works that are hot topic, hot button, you know, books in the political world, but not necessarily hot button books at all in the academic world. So that's, I mean, I'm just trying to understand that.
Board Member Greenberg, actually, the novels that were not recommended, and ladies, please correct me if I'm wrong, were not recommended for a variety of reasons. So actually, the red novels were not novels that were challenged. They were instead not up to what we thought was, I was in one committee meeting where the committee thought this novel's fine. It was not that interesting and maybe not up to our standard. Another wasn't aligned to the grade level standards, so didn't necessarily support or fit. So there was a variety of reasons why novels weren't recommended, and some were actually they scared Dr. Dodge. She doesn't like scary novels, so to make everyone laugh, she had to read some scary ones that she did not like.
It's true. Lots of ghosts.
She called me.
Vice President Dr. Hartwells.
Can you just confirm, my understanding is that there's always, regardless of what color code we are going to assign here, there's always an option for a student to have an alternative assignment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Menzel?
Yeah, can we go back? Let's go to the next slide. Nope, next one. Nope, okay, let's go back further this way. I just want to underscore right here. So when we look at recommending a novel to the governing board for approval, the first question is the novel aligned with the standards? There are so many reading options, and what we can't do if we're going to have consistency of high expectation for all of our students to be able to meet the standards that have been established by the state of Arizona is to have it just be a free-for-all. And so this process helps ensure that when we're approving a novel, we've reviewed it to say, this one is going to help us ensure that if it's taught in a classroom, it's aligned with the standards. The other questions are important as well, but it starts by making sure that we've got that alignment. Some are tighter than others. And so I think the committee process is designed to help ensure that we're getting the best possible and widest variety of novels that meet student interest, but also are aligned with the standards.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Any other questions or comments? Oops. Board Member Greenberg.
No, I apologize. So I understand that, but my question is I mean, what is the threshold if the full committee made a 13-4, if the small committee made a 4-0 recommendation and the full committee made a 13-4 recommendation, how can a book, at what point is a book no longer on the conditional list and is just on the regular list? What is that? I mean, there has to be some measurement, right? Or is it just we're concerned that if we use this book or if a teacher uses this book, I mean, I'm, you know, the transparency point, we have to be transparent by law. We have to inform, you know, parents what works may be used during the year and whatnot. So I'm trying to understand, I guess on the one hand, there's so many books that I'm trying to understand how those specific books were chosen.
So,
And two, how does, I mean, what constitutes an unconditional approval versus a conditional approval?
So Board Member Greenberg, to elaborate on Dr. Guerin's comments about reaching consensus, we didn't have a set number of we needed to have this many people who were in favor of recommending the book compared to the other. Something else that was really important to us was teacher feedback about their comfort in teaching the content. So I'll reference, for example, The Haunting of Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House ends in a suicide. The teachers on the committee felt very uncomfortable. Assistant principals on the committee felt very uncomfortable with bringing that into our classrooms right now. Ghost Boys, for example, or two of the other books that we're going to review next year, they aren't even part of our district adoption. These are site-purchased or teacher-purchased materials that are not used using district funds for, but are books that historically people have liked to read. Again, times have changed, so there are different types of triggers, and we have kids who are coming to us from all different places. So there might have been experiences that children have had that if they were to read that book, the alternative selection, like Dr. Hartwell's brought to our attention, has been really important for us. So again, because it's conditionally recommended doesn't mean a teacher can't choose it. Another layer to this too is, as we're all aware, we have a lot of new teachers. There's teacher turnover. There are teachers who are teaching classes that they historically haven't taught, so it's new to them. We don't want to put somebody who is new to a grade level or new to the classroom in a situation where they aren't prepared for all that comes with teaching. Because teaching is not just about teaching the kids in our classroom, it's about communicating with our families as well. So that's where we really believe that the support that we can provide from teaching and learning is valuable, because we don't want to set a teacher up for any type of misfortune with all of their good intentions. So again, just because it's conditionally placed doesn't mean it can't be used. It just means we want to have a double check on it, and that we really understand what we're teaching and why we're teaching it.
So I think that, so we have all these books that teachers can choose from, and we provide them, warnings, or they understand the content. This book has suicide in it. This book has topics involving self-harm or death or racism or what have you. If we provide that all to the teachers, aren't the teachers capable of deciding because there are multiple books that address the same topics, and we don't require that all teachers use the exact same book for the exact same class across all our schools, wouldn't they be in a position to decide for themselves whether that book is acceptable or not for them, or within their purview of something they want to address?
Absolutely. I definitely want to value what the teacher has, but I also maybe think we should provide some context. Ghost Boys, that seems to be a topic right now, was read by two classrooms, one potential classroom. So when we think about district-wide, this is not a book that is even in every school. It's something that is on one campus, shared amongst a team, and then another campus that was going to utilize the book as well. So it's not like we are denying teachers throughout SUSD the opportunity to teach any of these books. Again, it's just a matter of making sure that we're prepared. And also to go back to what Dr. Menzel brought up, aligning with our standards. And something that Jonna has really been supporting our teachers with is, what are the skills? What are you trying to teach? It's not just about the content of the story, but what are the literacy standards? Are we looking for motif? Are you looking for character development? And is this the best book to teach that as well? And so it wasn't about a political commentary in our small group discussions.
Okay, I appreciate that. I won't take up any more time.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. Thank you for your questions, all board members, and Dr. Menzel for your clarification. Doctors Kim and Ms. Lindsay Stoller-Slover, thank you for your presentation. Thank you to everyone who played a role in this, including our community members, our administrators, and our instructional staff. Greatly appreciated. This is how we get better, so thank you. With that being said, at this point, I will ask for a motion to approve our 8B supplemental materials. Moved by Beckman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Hartwells. All in favor to approve the supplemental materials as presented, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
We have a 4-1. The motion passes. Thank you very much. And we will move on to action item 8C, IDEA ARP, not AARP, but ARP, grant stipends. And I believe Dr. Guerin is going to be presenting that for questions.
Yes,
Thank you.
President Sanowski, governing board members, Dr. Menzel, cabinet, and guests. Just what we needed in education, more acronyms delivered by ESSER. So we recently were made aware that we received additional ESSER funds related to IDEA or special education funds. And when speaking about how to allocate these funds, we understand one of our most pressing challenges is staffing with special education. So we already have a small incentive for staff that teach in self-contained classrooms. And this is one-time money, but we are recommending an additional $5,000 stipend for self-contained teachers, which would make a $7,000 stipend for next year, and a $2,000 stipend for resource teachers, K-12. And this also includes our preschool programs. We are hoping to incentivize some of our current staff members that have the certification that are in general education classrooms to consider coming back to special education. And there are districts around the state also offering incentives. So we need to stay competitive and draw teachers to our districts. So that is why we're making this recommendation.
Love it. Governing board members, questions. Vice President Dr. Hartwells.
Thank you, President Sanowski, and thank you for bringing this forward. I think we've all probably read how some of the states are moving in this direction, and it'd be nice if our state would do the same thing, but we're going to fill that void this year. My question is, the proposal is directed to the certified teachers and psychologists. What analysis has been done in incentivizing for the educational support professionals that remain or are considering or can recruit into the classroom? Because we know in special education in particular, it really takes a team.
Absolutely, and I was honored to be a part of the SSPA negotiations, and we felt like we really made some traction with the classified salary schedule by infusing $1.3 million into the different steps. So though it wasn't focused just on paraprofessionals, we felt that there was so much wage compression throughout our support staff that it was directed toward all of them. But this one is specifically to address our numerous teacher vacancies in the classroom. And then in addition, as we fill the vacant positions, we felt it was important to provide additional support so that teachers will stay in the positions by offering additional mentoring, not only to our teachers, but to our new school psychologists.
Okay, thank you. So as I understand it then, the educational support professionals that have specialties in special education, there won't be specific stipends for incentivization and to incentivize them to stay or move into these classrooms, but rather that was dealt with in the IBN as a whole?
Yes.
And is there a delta difference on the grant funds that were received versus how much this stipend total is proposed to net out?
So this takes most of the funds to cover this. We cost it per how many teacher vacancies, how many teachers we currently have. So it's not only new teachers that get this, it's teachers that are already currently serving. So it does take, I think it's a little over, oh, there it is, $890,000.
And what was the total additional ARP funds received under IDEA?
I'm sorry, the additional ARP funds are $890,998.30. And I have not done the math on the proposal and how close that gets us.
Shannon, do you, I can't see you.
We know that we have enough within the fund to provide the stipend. However, how close that is, I couldn't tell you right offhand right now.
So, okay, I would just ask that if we can, if there's some net remaining, if we could give consideration for the paraprofessionals.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
great input. Any other questions on this topic? Board Member Greenberg, do you have any questions on this topic?
None, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no more questions, I ask that we make a motion to approve IDEA ARP grant stipends at this time.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor to approve the IDEA ARP grant and stipends, say aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And at this time, we will move on to action item 8D, expenditure authorization, early procurement of electrical equipment, approval of JOC early procurement electrical for Pueblo Elementary. And I believe this will be a Q&A, and we have Mr. Rayler here for any questions that anyone might have. Yes, Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells.
Thank you, President Sanowski. Dennis, my question is, this total, given cost escalation we've already experienced, this total amount here that's projected, $143,000 and some, is that pretty close to what was initially, as you're developing the GMP, is this close to what you had projected or what McCarthy had projected?
President Sanowski, Vice President Hart-Wells, members of the board, Dr. Menzel. We had, this is not a number that we would have projected individually.
Okay.
We have a budget established for Pueblo, and this is one of those items that it's actually a 52-week lead time right now. So we've pulled it out. We've locked in the electrical contractor and supplier so that we can have this price and this price alone without seeing any other escalation. But this wouldn't be an item that we would have segregated to budget.
Okay, so this is usually rolled into a larger number.
Correct.
So we don't really have an idea. Okay.
Which you'll have the joy of seeing in just a few weeks.
Okay. Well, we'll be prepared for that shock. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there'll be a few emails in advance to prepare you guys.
Board Member Beckman.
So I don't suppose we're existing in an environment where we would get any sort of incentive for pre-purchasing this, right? No?
Zero.
Okay, thanks.
Doesn't hurt to ask, right?
Well, usually the terms, if you know, in that world, sometimes you can, but not now.
I was meeting with the Pueblo team today, and I think I've got more gray hair than I did earlier in the day. We were told a story that's happening out in Mesa School District. They have this exact same equipment that was ordered last June, and one of the main breakers has 2 little tiny O-rings that they cannot get. And those O-rings are holding up that service entrance section to be installed in Mesa's high school. And so they're coming up with a plan B to get the air conditioning going so they can do the rest of the work. And they're looking at about $110,000 a month to get temporary electricity to the building. So it is really, really bad out there.
Well, that's a fun thought.
Yeah. I
You're
used
just
to
laying the
sleep.
groundwork, aren't you?
Yeah.
I used to sleep very, very well at night, and of late, it's not working out for me.
Understood. And note that our kids in our community deserve upgraded facilities, so we will do what we can to continue with those projects.
Yes.
Super, thank you, Dennis. Any other questions? All right, Board Member Greenberg? Do you have any questions?
No, I appreciate that explanation, Dennis.
Yep. Okay, seeing no more questions, I am asking for a motion to approve action item 8D at this time.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to approve expenditure authorization, early procurement of electrical equipment, approval of JOC, early procurement electrical for Pueblo Elementary, please say aye at this time. Aye.
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 And the motion passes 5-0. Moving
Thank you.
on to our last action item for our meeting today, approval of the 2022-2023 Governing Board meetings calendar. Dr. Menzel.
So you may recall last year, we moved our meetings to the second and fourth Tuesdays with the specific intent to avoid the conflict with the City of Scottsdale council meetings. Unbeknownst to us when we did that, the city was going to change its meetings, and so we still have the conflict. From a school district perspective, the first and third Tuesdays are better functionally, and we would like to return to that schedule. So our first meeting of the next school year would be August 2nd, the day before school starts, but really nice to be able to approve all the summer hirings that we didn't do in July because we don't have a meeting then. So we recommend that we go back to our first and third. Efforts have been made to encourage the city to stick with the second and fourth now that they're on it, and then we won't be in conflict so that residents of Scottsdale can attend both our meetings and the city's meetings, which is really an exciting way to spend Tuesday nights.
Do any board members have any questions about the proposed school district meeting calendar for our governing board? Okay, seeing none, I ask for a motion to approve this governing board meetings calendar.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 The motion passes 5-0. Awesome. At this time, I ask for a motion to adjourn this special meeting.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor to adjourn, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:50 PM on May 10th, 2022.